Hey, I'm Anthony Romano, and I'm going to tell you some lifting tips to get more muscle gains in this video. So, I'm going to run through them very quickly. I'm going to talk about stretching, I'm going to talk about powerlifting versus bodybuilding, high-intensity circuit training, concentric versus eccentric movements, the negative training, blood flow restriction, and fat burning through breathing differently, and heart rates associated with fat burn. So I'm going to tell you all about these topics in this video. Let's make it quick. I'm going to run through them, and you're going to have a load of lifting tips after you finish this video because of those topics. So before we get into the video, if you like it, that will make YouTube show my content to more people, and that's all you have to do to help me grow my page. Also, check out my website, romanoketo.com, for free guides, coaching, consults, and future books and programs I'm dropping, which if you're watching this a year from now, hopefully there's a load of them out. So let's get into this video, but before we do, we're going to start off laying the foundation with powerlifting versus bodybuilding. You've heard me say in other videos, perhaps, that there's a difference in how you train if you're a powerlifter or a bodybuilder. That's why we have different names for them. Powerlifters focus on heavy weights for minimal repetitions. Bodybuilders focus on moderate weights for moderate repetitions. So basically, with the bodybuilding approach, you have rep ranges of 6 to 12 reps, and the weight is going to be moderately challenging. The more, advanced strategies will involve throwing in some really heavy stuff similar to powerlifting and some really light stuff closer to the 18-19 rep range used as a burnout sort of thing. So that's kind of what you have with bodybuilding, but here are the actual tangible mechanism differences between both of them. So powerlifters, what they will achieve when they do, a 1 rep max or a 2 or 3 rep max, they're going to be tearing the muscle fibers very deep. Okay, and this will of course cause muscle gain. Muscle in one way is a byproduct of strength. However, with the bodybuilding side of things, you are still challenging the muscle. You're not burning it out completely. You're not taxing the central nervous system as much, lifting heavy ass weight. You're not taxing the joint as much, lifting those weights as well. And that doesn't mean that powerlifting is a problem because of those things. People who enjoy it get massive strength gains by doing this. It's just that size is a balance between the two. So when we're looking at the differences in the muscle, powerlifters are tearing the muscle fiber, right? Isn't that what you need to grow muscle? Not necessarily. Bodybuilders, on the other hand, will tear the muscle, perhaps not as deeply as the powerlifter would, but from there, they're continuing to slam more repetitions at decently challenging weight levels. So what does that do? That puts more blood, more lactic acid, and basically fills up the muscle with more fluid, which will stretch these tears, micro tearing, even further. And this is what will cause the muscle to grow via hypertrophy. So essentially what you're training your muscle to do when you're bodybuilding is you're training it to grow to accommodate all that fluid that is being exposed to the muscle. Your body's a survival adaptive machine, and it will grow and adapt to the situations and circumstances you subject your body to. So if you subject your body to, loads of repetitive weight that's challenging, it's going to have to grow to accommodate all the fluid intake that is basically a result of the training. And of course, you're going to have muscle fibers being broken down still, so there's demand to rebuild tissue is still there. In fact, it's being stretched even further by all the fluid. Now, when we're looking at the powerlifter, they're still putting that demand on their body, but they're focusing more on the strength and growing the muscle to accommodate that strength. There's no extra demand put in place there to enhance how the size is going to be beyond simply the micro tearing. So make sure you're aware of that based on your goal. If your goal is to become very strong, you want to train more like a powerlifter in a safe manner. If your goal is to become stronger and bigger, more so, as a balance of the two, then you're going to want to opt for more bodybuilding. Now, stretching. This is another side point here, and it's one that I've learned more so from Charles Poliquin, who was a world-renowned coach in this area, and unfortunately passed away a few years ago. Charles Poliquin advocated something that was very interesting to me that I learned about in my teen years, and this is getting the full stretch and the full range of motion in exercises. Now, you must be very careful with this, and I'm, taking this Charles Poliquin example to make a point here. Flexibility is a key part of bodybuilding, okay? Because the amount you can stretch a muscle determines, first of all, how deeply you can get the contraction and the micro tearing, and it also determines basically the amount of the muscle that's going to get covered. So if I do a bicep curl with shitty form and only doing a little bit of motion, you're only going to get micro tearing in that area. If you stretch the whole muscle and contract the entire muscle, you will be getting deeper stretches, deeper micro tearing, and assuming you're not, going past your personal flexibility limit. So that, of course, is something you have to build up over time, and you should work on getting flexible before implementing advanced stretching. But there was even one exercise where Charles Poliquin would have people on a deadlift platform, and they would deadlift the weight lower than the ground. So they would stand on an elevated platform, and the bar that was on the ground would be beneath them. So they would fully stretch the hamstring and get even greater gains. So that is a sort of element that is really advanced, but the main principle you have to take away here is the stretch, work flexibility in a safe, controlled manner. But then from there, you have to work on getting the full range of motion. This is what's going to result in the biggest muscle size gain for you. So on that note, when we're talking about the concentric and eccentric motions of the lift, this is often referred to as the positive and the negative. This is referring to the contraction and the release of an exercise. People will often tell you that you have to do them very slow if you want to gain. This is partially true, but you will gain more if you do the eccentric, the release, on a slow manner, on a slow tempo, and the concentric, the contraction, on a rapid speed. Not to the point where you're going to hurt yourself, but essentially you want to train the muscle for explosive exercise. This is what's going to result in the biggest repair of fast twitch muscle fibers. If you are making slow twitch sort of activation all the time, you're not going to be growing these fast twitch muscle fibers. When you look at a sprinter or like a random sport that doesn't necessarily require muscle size, but you see random people in sports with large muscles, even though they don't train specifically for it, it's because they're working on the fast twitch explosive movements. And this is what you want to do with a, rather rapid contraction and a slow release. You're training the muscle to have more control in the release, and you're also training it to explode upon, desire. So that is important, and of course the amount of fast twitch and slow twitch fibers you have is a deciding variable individually, but the point is, if you train in that manner, you will train your muscles to explode, and they will have to grow to accommodate more glycogen, more glycolytic activity, which will facilitate explosive movements. And at the same time, you're also going to be maximizing the muscle tearing with a slow release, okay? On that note, people will talk about negative training. So negative training is basically putting more weight on because you can release it even if you're not strong enough to contract it. So if somebody's doing a bench press, perhaps they're not strong enough to hit 2 plates on a bench, but they can release it and have their buddy stand over top of them and help them slowly do the negative, help them lift it up on the positive, and they can just do the release, right? That is one way to get more out of your training. However, I don't think it's as practical on a regular basis. I think it would be better to work up with lower rep ranges on both the concentric and the eccentric part of the movement, but that is another option for you if you're at a serious plateau and you've tried all these other tips. But there's a lot of other nutritional factors that I think would be more beneficial firsthand, which you can watch my other videos to learn about. So when we're talking about negative training, that is another option for you. You can work on burning out on the negative motions. But again, that ties into, you need to have the flexibility first. You need to have the range of motion. Now, high intensity circuit style training. What I mean by this is just a term I use to explain that your workouts, even though it's good to be calculated, should also be somewhat focused on the experience of the workout. You should be focused on going in there and slamming a workout with minimal rest times, okay? If your goal is bodybuilding, of course. This doesn't mean you can't take a rest if it's necessary, but due to the nature of bodybuilding, that you're not training with 1 rep maxes, you require less time for your muscles to recover. Powerlifters need to recover for several minutes at a time because they're exposing their body and their central nervous system to huge amounts of weight. Bodybuilders do not experience this if they're doing things properly. And when we're looking at, the effect of minimizing rest times, you will get more of that pump, right? Everybody talks about the pump. But that's essentially one deciding variable for more muscle growth. It's not the only thing, because strength gains in progression matter, but time under tension matters a lot as well. And these are some of the cardinal rules of muscle building. Time under tension is key to actually growing your muscle, because your muscle's not going to grow, A, if you're not getting stronger, but B, if you're not telling it that it has to deal with this amount of tension on a day-to-day basis, or however frequently you're training. So you need to focus more so on treating the workout like a sort of circuit, not necessarily high intensity, right? But it has to be sort of circuit style in the manner that you are, let's say you just finished your set of, 10 to 12 reps on bench press, if that's a weight that you can hit, right, because 10 to 12 implies that it's something that you can hit 10 to 12 times, you can then, from there, probably not require too much rest, and you can go over to a fly machine and do an isolation at light weight and continue burning out and hitting the muscle from a slightly different angle. As a side note, extra tip here, angles. This goes hand in hand with supersetting, right, which is, performing a set quickly after another, and drop setting, which is the same thing but dropping the weight. But hitting the muscle from a different angle after you've just burnt it out from a certain part, activating other parts of the same muscle, is another great way to maximize muscle building. So on this note, let's get into the heart rate and fat burning as well. So when we're looking at breathing and heart rate in relation to that sort of minimal rest time, anything over around 140 beats per minute is generally going to be, pretty intense. Maintaining around 130 to 140 beats per minute for most people is going to allow for maximal fat burn. Why? And you are going to be breathing that fat out as well, especially if you're in a ketogenic state or a fasted state like I talk about in my other videos. When your heart is beating at that rate, your body understands that it's not at its peak capacity, right? Unless you're somebody who's very overweight, etc., and has your body is not used to exercise. If you are doing the most intense heart rate activities, your body's going to tell itself, hey, let's use glucose for this because this is a quick burning activity and we are sprinting right now, okay? If you're doing 130 to 140 beats per minute, you are going to be breathing out, oxidizing more fat. That is how much of the body fat you actually burn gets removed from the body, oxidizing it. And that's also why the ketogenic state is a great way to tap into that, because you're not only enhancing your body's ability to use fat, but it calls into question, why is it so easy to remove fat? You burn it through breathing, right? Your body prefers to use fat as the primary fuel. This is why we store endless amounts of it on our body and only around 2,000 calories worth of carb. So that's another side nutritional note here. But when we're looking at breathing out and heart rates, if you are training at a relatively moderate heart rate, such as 130 to 140, that again will go hand in hand with minimizing rest times. But if you're cutting, you will notice better fat burning effects. This is why I have a video on cardio and the best form of it being extra weightlifting. If you are doing weightlifting that is not too intense in your muscles, you're not going to tax the central nervous system as much, and you're going to burn the same amount of calories as a Stairmaster, except you are putting more demand on your muscles to grow. You are basically telling your body, hey, not only have we burned 500 calories, but we've done it in a manner that is going to sensitize tissues to anabolic responses. So this is why that is ultimately the best form of cardio, is extra weightlifting at a light level. So that doesn't mean there's no merit to doing some treadmill or Stairmaster, light incline, low intensity, steady state cardio. It simply means that you can improve and add in more anabolic effects by doing weightlifting. This is some great work I've pulled from Stan Efferding and Flex Wheeler. But at the same time, this is also something that I've researched for years. Other books, Mark Bubbs, Dr. Mark Bubbs, Peak. There's lots of other resources here that I'm pulling that from. I'm just trying to hit you with it in a short time as possible. So as far as the fat burning effects, though, there you go. Extra light weightlifting as cardio. As far as the breathing, when somebody is breathing during a sort of circuit style workout, your body requires more oxygen to lift intense weights. This is going to be playing into helping you lift more weights and also burning more fat. But at the same time, your mitochondria, which is the bacterial part of your cell, takes up oxygen, and that is the part that allows you to breathe, okay, if we're talking cellularly, and use oxygen. So at the same time, if somebody's in a ketogenic state, they're going to be able to uptake more oxygen. We know this, which is some stuff that scientists should be losing their minds about. And I have a video on that as well. And also, it helps you to oxidize fat better. So it plays in as well nutritionally, but the point is you're going to get better lifting performance if you're breathing and taking in enough oxygen. That's going to be conducive to this sort of circuit style training. So it's going to hit multiple goals that you have in one stone, in one technique, okay? Killing multiple birds with one stone. And that's another great tip to get better workout performance. And this is why, if you ever see the Wim Hof breathing people do, there's one exercise, it's basically a style of breathing that allows you to take in more oxygen and clear out your body of carbon dioxide. Essentially, when people do this, they're able to do double the amount of push-ups they normally can do because they have more oxygen to work with. And it's literally, people think, oh wow, I thought just it's your size of your muscles that indicates how much strength you have, right? There's many other variables and facets that play into strength. It's your central nervous system, strength, it is your ability to uptake and use oxygen. There are far many other variables, and as a side note, ketogenic metabolism is one great way to take advantage of them, but also it's going to help you lift more even if you're not using that sort of dieting technique, which I talk about for all my other videos and been using for the past 9 years. And high intensity stuff at 1 repetition maxes, so powerlifting style, is not going to be as conducive to this because your breathing is going to be relatively stable. Sure, you might exert yourself when you're doing that 1 or 2 rep max, but it's not as conducive to building the body in that manner. It's more so conducive to building strength. So the last thing I'm going to talk about here is basically blood flow restriction. So blood flow restriction is basically, I have a video on this, where you get these sort of bands, these gimmicky bands, and you put them around either your arms or your legs, any of your limbs. And this is going to restrict the blood flow in a certain area. To make it short, this is a way to enhance the pump, but it is further playing into that dynamic I explained where bodybuilders need to flood the muscle with extra lactic acid and extra blood. And this will enhance the pump, of course, but it will enhance the extra micro tears that you are creating through weightlifting. This is not something that you should be using in a super heavyweight activity like powerlifting. It's not something that you should be using where you're cutting off the circulation in your limbs, but it is something that can help you milk out more muscle gains, and it is a tangible thing that actually will provide significant benefit. I have a video on this entirely explaining some of the science behind it, but it's something that I will absolutely use for variance and to create extra stimulus for my muscles, especially if you're at a plateau, especially if there's gym closures in your area in 2020. Okay, this is a great home workout tool. And it's also great for the gym if you don't mind looking like, you know, a superhero or Iron Man or something, putting these weird straps on, these kinky bands on yourself, if you're into that. So, looks like we've covered everything from here. I hope this video was informative for you. It's hopefully giving you loads of tips to implement into your next workout. And if it has, like the video, follow me on Instagram, and subscribe. This video is one that I try to be quick fire with. If you want to learn more about the dense scientific breakdowns, watch my other videos, okay? Thank you again for watching. Leave me some comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. My name is Anthony Romano. Peace.